Listen, are we already behind on here? Yes, absolutely. That is going to be a common theme here. It is what it is. It's just it never on time. Anyway, because I'm so far behind, I'm cheating and combining a few different videos into one because well, it's January 13th and I still have not done my 2024 reading wrap up, talked about my 2025 goals, or done my January TBR. So that's what this video is all three to hopefully get the ball rolling because good lord I'm behind. In my defense though, I moved from day shift to night shift, which is this whole current situation. No, it's not aesthetically pleasing. Aesthetically pleasing is outside, where it is 8 degrees. I would rather it be in here where I was warm. But also, as soon as I moved from day shift to night shift, I got hit with what feels like the plague. I'm still fighting through that plague. I have so much Robitussin on board. Who knows how this is going to turn out? But you know what? Progress is progress. Anyway, so that's what this video is 2024 reading wrap up, my 2025 goals. There's nothing crazy there, short and simple. And then also my January TBR. And then we're going to roll from there. Fabulous. Awesome. So 2024 is the year I accidentally got back into reading. I had always been a very avid reader growing up, and then I kind of just stopped reading. And then in April of 2024, I picked up my first book in ages, and it kind of just spiraled from there. I think I ended up reading about 56 books for the year. That being said, I feel like a lot of what I read was stuff that was popular, heavily recommended, or just stuff I felt like over the years people were like, "Oh, you haven't read in a while?" Like, well, this is something that came out a couple years ago that I think you would love, or this was really popular even farther back, and so on and so forth. Like, I definitely felt like I was kind of playing catch up on what had been popular while I had been gone, if that makes any sense. And then obviously, I kind of used it as like a way to factor in of how much my taste has changed since I was younger. Like growing up, I was always really big on historical fiction and fantasy. Like those two were like my cup of tea. And I was kind of curious to see how much it's changed at the older I've gotten. And I definitely say I feel like my preference toward writing style has changed, but my overall basics have not changed. Like I still really love historical fiction. I still enjoy fantasy. I definitely have figured out I'm big on fantasy, less so romantasy, which is a whole new genre that's come out since I haven't been reading. And then dark academia was another one that I realized very quickly. I was like, oh, this is definitely my cup of tea. I was like, and I like was thinking back. I was like, dark academia has been a thing since when I was reading very avidly as a kid. I just don't think it really truly had like a title per se, or if it did, I never paid attention to it, which is very much a possibility. Anyway, for the wrap up, I am not going to give spoilers. If I am going to say something minorly spoily, I will give the heads up. I will like raise a hand or put it down when it starts or ends, anything of that nature. But I'm going to do my best to do no spoilers. I'm going to try and keep it simple, things of that nature. Listen, we all know when you're trying something new, there's a lot of trial and error. I erred a lot tonight. I have been on and off recording for about 2.5 hours, and I very quickly realized I was only like 6 reviews in, and if this is the way I was going to go, it was going to take me 10 hours to get through everything. So I was like, no, no, no. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be as rambly as I want it to be. Probably a good thing though. You all probably don't care that much, and so I'm doing a little bit more rapid fire. If I want to do a long, rambly, winded video on a book specifically, that will be a later thing. I got other stuff to talk about. We ain't got time for all this. Anyway, to start to start off, we're gonna talk about the books I reread last year. So these are books I had actually read before my hiatus, and the reason why I'm rereading them is I'm actively rereading everything on my bookshelf and to make the decision of do you stay or do you go. And it's kind of intimidating to look at like all 200 something from there. And so I decided to pick books I knew for a fact I heavily enjoyed already, so that like hopefully it would keep like I would be more encouraged to keep reading, right? Like actually pick up the stuff there and not want to just keep reading the new stuff that I haven't touched yet. So that was kind of the whole thought process in hopefully starting out strong, and I feel like I started out pretty strong. And one of the very first ones I had actually started out with was the Gemma Doyle series by Libba Bray. For those of you who've never read of it or heard of it, it is essentially about a girl who was living in India at the time with her parents when unfortunately her mom was kind of murdered in like a weird, mysterious way. And they ended up sending her to a British boarding school that happened to be where her mother was. And so she ends up finding out a lot of weird stuff that had happened at that school, and a lot about the past and her mother, and kind of connections to magic that she kind of was learning at this time, that ever since she got over into that school. um Overall, there's 3 books in the series. I admittedly, looking back at it now, I feel like I might have given this a little bit of a lower rating if I had read this later. But overall, like, the plot was pretty interesting and really good. I liked the magic system. I loved the writing. I love Libba Bray's writing so much. She's actually coming out with a new book, I think, in February, and I'm super excited for it. Downside definitely was, I felt like now that I'm older, the characters were a little bit trickier to connect with. It is a YA, and there was definitely points where I was like, "Girls, get it together!" Like, I just wanted to wring out your little neck. Like, I understand you're trying to fit in, everything's new, but for the love of God, use your brain. Luckily, there is some character development which did help, but that was definitely, there was points I was like, "Girls, get it together." Anyway, I definitely feel like if I had read this a little bit later in the year, I might have not have given it as high as a score. But the first book I gave a 4.25, the second book I gave a 4, and the third book I gave it a 4.5. I might have knocked him down like point 0.2, point half, kind of depending on how I felt. But overall, like, it was a good starting point. Like, it was at least the right step to kind of get me rolling. Because actually, the very next one that I read was another one by Libba Bray. Now, this one is one of my all-time favorite series, and that is The Diviners. I love The Diviners so much. For those of you who've never read The Diviners, it is about a group of people. Specifically, we're starting with Evie O'Neill, and all these people have kind of special powers, gifts, and they are called diviners. For example, Evie can basically touch an object and kind of read you a little bit about what the person who that object belonged to. um, Henry and Lynn can walk in dreams. Theta, oh my lord, can control flames or create flames. Sam can do a whole "don't see me" act. Memphis is a healer, and his brother kind of can see glimpses of the future. So anyway, they all have these gifts. They're all considered diviners, and essentially, it kind of it kind of takes you through like them kind of figuring things out, and then them kind of getting exposed. And they kind of, this was a series that made me realize I actually enjoy horror and paranormal. I had always convinced myself I didn't, because I don't like scary movies. I love the suspense and the horror throughout this entire series, and it is so well done. The writing, the plot, the magic system is so well done. The characters, they're diverse, they're interesting. I feel like some people hate specifically Evie, but a lot of the reason that they hate her is, I like, in it's even pointed out several times, certain the way she acts certain ways is to kind of protect herself. And I just feel like people think that, oh no, that's actually her, and it's like, well, it's more of like a shell. I digress. But overall, it has to be like, this is probably one of my favorite series ever. I gave the first book a 5 stars, the second book a 4.75, the third book 5 stars, and the fourth one is the one that kind of fell flat for me. I did give it a 4 star. Overall, I didn't love a couple aspects of that final book, especially because I'm a big fan. If a character dies, they stay dead, and they were doing so great with that the first 3 books, and then we got to the fourth book, and I'm like, what happened to the? It's what it is. It's okay. Just kind of felt like a lot of what we were building up to, and like the consequences of the action suddenly didn't have consequences. Anyway, besides that, I love the series. Fourth one was a little bit of letdown. Still love it. Still one of my favorites. The final book that I reread last year was actually one I technically read when I was on my hiatus. I think it was really one of the only books that I can vividly remember picking up, and I'm a little surprised that this book itself didn't get me back into reading, but it is what it is. And that was the Song of Achilles. I listen. If you are a stickler for like accuracy in books, and like this, because this is a Greek retelling of Patroclus and Achilles. So if you're a stickler for like it has to be accurate, has to be accurate, this probably is not necessarily your cup of tea, because there are quite a bit of inaccuracies in it. But if you just want a well written emotional telling of a story, this was, listen, I don't cry. Okay? I do not cry. I do not cry for anything. I was phenomenal. I was so enthralled with this book. That last page, it was the very last page. that did me in, okay? And I was bawling my eyes out at 3 a.m. in the barn aisle when I was supposed to be working, bawling, 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 bawling. That was the first time I read it. The second time I actually listened to the audiobook, and I will say the audiobook is also phenomenal. Oh, that actually reminds me, the Diviners. I also when I reread the Diviners this round, I actually listened to the audiobook. The audiobook is also phenomenal. Anyway, Song of Achilles. I re-listened to it I reread it this time with the audiobook. The audiobook is also phenomenal. And again, it's one of those things. If you are really like a stickler for like accuracy, like the Greek accuracy, you're probably gonna nitpick on some things. But if you just want like a really good emotional storytelling with the detail, and it's so good. I still loved it, and it is another 5 star for me. Now listen, I know me going right off the bat with all those 4 and 5 stars, you're probably like, dang, it, it's not consistently like that. From here on out, the rating system is a little bit more up and down. Okay, I promise. So everything from here on out, I picked up for the very first time in 2024. So these were all new reads for me last year, which is funny because I'm going to go in chronological order here. The very first two that I'm going to mention, I hated. Like, I did not like them at all. I complained about them. Everyone and their mother was shoving these down my throat. They're like, you have to read them. You have to read them. You're going to love them. Can't believe you haven't read them yet. And then I read them, and I was like, I hope I never read anything like this again. How dare you all recommend this to me? I was like, I have to read something better after this, or else I'm not picking up another book, like, again, for another, like, 10 years. Like, I was so mad. Luckily, the very next book I picked up was Immaculate. And so then I just kept on reading from there. But really, we can thank these two books for kind of getting me back into the gear of reading, because if I hadn't picked up them and hated them as much as I did, who knows if I would have found the next book afterwards. Anyway, so, the very first two books that I read last year were freaking Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. I gave Fourth Wing a 2.0 and Iron Flame a 1.5. This felt like Wattpad books. Like, everyone was talking about, oh, Hunger Games Inheritance combined, and I was like, with spice, and I was like, yeah, it sounds awesome. I read this and I was like, this should have stayed on Wattpad. There was sections of the plot I was actually excited about, and I was curious about where they were going to go, and it sucked. Or there was so much potential in certain plot lines, and then it was just nothing. I hated the characters. They were so poorly done. The one character I liked died. I was like, you were the only one with substance, and they killed you. For what? For the plot. Congratulations. No, it was for the plot. But I was just like, seriously? The only character with substance. The writing style, horrendous. And honestly, listen, sometimes when people are like, oh, it's such a spicy book, I love it. And then I read it, I'm like, how boring is your sex life that is what you consider spicy? Just a thought process. Anyway, I hated it. Am I going to read Onyx Storm? Probably. I'm going to wait till my library gets it because I'm not paying for it. But I'm kind of curious to see what on earth they're going to do with that dumpster fire. I know people are going to love it. Don't know why, but it is what it is. Anyway, that being said, my TikTok at the time watched me go into raging flame about Fourth Wing. I was I was going through it, complaining about Wattpad, all that stuff, and I immediately went into and had a totally different crash out session, because I went next and read Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I gave it a 5 star. When I tell you, I think I annoyed my TikTok to never ending hell, because I started giving like like constant chapter updates. I read that whole thing in a night. I read Babel in a whole freaking night, and every freaking chapter I was updating my TikTok, and I was like, guys, I found it. I love it. I did not pick up another book after Babel for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, because I was so in love. Immaculate. I loved it. I wish I could read it for the first time again. I'm actually planning on doing a reread here probably in February, and I can't wait. Listen, for some people, I always say with academia books that sometimes there are academia books where you read them and you feel dumb. Like, here's my thing. You have to at least be willing to learn when you're picking up an academia book. And sometimes when you pick up an academia book, they just make you feel dumb. But there are other ones that even when you pick them up, and as long as you're willing to learn, you do not feel lost. You do not feel dumb. They at least help you, guide you a little bit. And yeah, sure, you might have to sit down for a second and look up something, but at no point do I feel lost or dumb or I'm missing a piece of the plot, or I'm missing something vital. I freaking love Babel. I'm not the brightest person on earth, and I did not one point never felt lost in that book. It is phenomenal. Listen, I tried to do this whole recording the first time. Babel took 15 minutes. And that's when I realized I was like, I've gotta change something here. Read it. It was immaculate. Anyway, so I gave her a 5 star. Obviously, loved her. From then on, I went on to read I continued with the academia trend and read the Atlas 6 series. Um, this was a series I don't know how I kind of felt about it to begin with. And then I feel like once I pieced it together, I actually really enjoyed it. And then I got to the third book and I was just like, yeah, throw that all away. That was what happened. It was one of those series I liked it and I was recommending it the first 2 books, and then I got the third book and I was like, I don't know what happened anymore. So like I was saying with the academia books, like sometimes I'm reading them and it makes me feel a little bit stupid. I felt a little stupid in the third Atlas 6, and I was just like, I don't know what happened anymore. I'm lost. Anyway, so for the first Atlas book, I gave it a 3.75. Second one, also a 3.75. The third one, I gave a 2.25. Listen, if you would like to read the first 2 and just the first 2, go ahead. If you're not like super attached to having an ending, if you would like to have an ending, I don't know. That was just me. The next book I read was Icarus, and I'm not gonna lie, I actually read this twice this year, and I read it kind of back to back twice because I was wondering if I missed something the first time. So Icarus is also another Greek retelling, or slight, very slight. It's kind of just in the same vein. I was expecting, I'm gonna minor spoiling. I was expecting it to be an accurate ending to the story of Icarus, and was it's a happier ending, okay? Much happier ending. So I actually reread it because I was expecting like a miserable ending, and I was like, wait a second. I was like, hold a second. I need to reread this. Anyway, it's a little bit shorter. I think it only took me a couple hours. It took me like maybe 6 hours. I did it in one sitting. It is really good. It is I really enjoyed the way it was written. It's very kind of quick paced, easy to follow. I ended up giving it was a 3.7. I definitely recommend it. It was nice. Again, I was expecting an actual Icarus story, and so when I got to the ending, I actually had to reread it the whole book. I was like, wait a second, I missed something? No, I did not. I just wasn't expecting a happy ending, apparently. I don't know what a happy ending is. It's fine. It is what it is. The next book that I read was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I started off strong. Like once I got past Fourth Wing, I was hitting good book after good book. Invisible Life of Addie LaRue was my introduction to V.E. Schwab. When I tell you Vicious is on my list of things to read for 2025, can't freaking wait. I'm so glad I was introduced to her. Anyway, gave The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue a 4 star. That was great way to be introduced to book talk. Loved it. The next one I read was Wayward. I was so excited for this book because it was historical fiction, multiple POV, witches, feminism. I was like, this is right up my alley. I'm gonna love this book. I do not it felt so slow. And like it kind of got to the point I was only interested in one POV, and I hate when I only get interested in one POV because it makes the book so much longer because you're just not really interested in everyone else. And then you kind of sit and wait for that one POV and you're just like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, finally. And then it's a short and then it's like, hurry up. So it's kind of how it felt. I ended up giving her a 2 star. I was really excited and I was kind of sad and bummed out that she just, I don't know, it just felt like a lot and yet nothing all at the same time. I Fell in Love with Hope is another one. I wonder if I had read it later, if I would have not given it as high of a score as I did when I first read it. Here's the thing, I really enjoyed the writing. I really enjoyed the plot and the idea. I just wish there was a side character. I wish that it was the main focus. I don't know how to explain it without giving it away, but like kind of the main character we are kind of centered around kind of more focuses on a certain individual, and I just wasn't necessarily as enthralled with their story as the random side character where I was like, I want that story. I was like, I don't care about that story. I want that story. And I think that for me, I was just so freaking focused on one of the random side characters that I didn't focus on anything else. Overall, I gave it a 3.75, but I was just so more focused on one of the side characters. I wanted their story and I didn't get it. It's fine. Anyway, the next one I read, it was they both die at the end. Listen, I don't love at first sight things, and I should have known better when I realized what this was going into, where like they both die at the end, obviously. Um I don't know, the whole, and it wasn't even love at first sight. It was just kind of love through proximity and desperation and last moments. Again, this is another one. I honestly don't know if I would have rated it as high as I did when I first read it, purely because I loved the concept and the writing was in, mostly enjoyable. I feel like, if I can remember correctly, it's been a while since I've read this book. I feel like I originally gave it a 3.5. I honestly wonder if I would have dropped it to a 2.5 just because I don't know. It didn't stand out after reading everything throughout all this. Like, it didn't really stand out. It's kind of one of those maybes if I were to recommend it. I feel like I know there's more from the series coming out. I just don't feel compelled to read it, if that makes any sense. The next thing I read was the Poppy War trilogy, which I feel like we saw coming. If we talk about how much I love Babel, did I love it? Absolutely. I love the Poppy Wars. I was stupidly obsessed, and it has actually still been like my entire For You page. I don't know what, like, there was like a resurgence, and it's been all over my TikTok again over the past like couple weeks. Anyway, the Poppy Wars. I gave the first one a 4.25, the second one a 4.25, and the third one a 4. And the reason I gave the final one a 4 is it was just the thing with the ending. I was just like, I know exactly why we did it. I know why we did it. Do you know how much I would have loved to change it just a smidge? But obviously, I totally get it. I love it and I respected it. Anyway, I heavily recommend the Poppy Wars. Freaking love the Poppy Wars. The next one I ended up reading, I was on a good streak from here on. Well, no, I wasn't. Maybe I was. I don't know. I don't know how to read my own handwriting, apparently. Heartless Hunter was the next one I read. This actually dropped, I think, last year before. This was a recent release. Actually, the second book for this is coming out here in a couple weeks, and I already have it pre-ordered. I loved Heartless Hunter. This was a very like witch hunter versus witch type thing, and it was freaking loved it. This was so well done. The magic system in this, excellent. The freaking writing, the plot, I loved this. This was a 4.75. I was highly impressed. Like, I walked into this knowing that, like, I don't know. I was like, it's a YA. I don't know. I freaking loved this. This was phenomenal. I cannot wait for the second book. I'm so excited. The next one I read was A Fate Inked in Blood. A Fate Inked in Blood is one of those books that I also, like, anytime I think about it, I think about I should drop it a rating. Like, I read it, and I know there's a second one coming out. I'll probably read the second one, but I don't really want to. I just kind of feel like I need to read it to see how they finish. Kind of the same thing with Onyx Storm. I gave it a 2.5. Honestly, sometimes I think about it and I'm like, I just should have dropped it to like a 2, maybe even like a 1.75. I did not enjoy it. There was just a lot, and there was also nothing, and I did not like the main female character, like, at all. And then also just a lot of what the main male character did. Like, it just, is communication that difficult for you all sometimes? Apparently the answer is yes. And like, I understand. Well, they're sworn. I don't care. Just figure things out, man, for the love of God. Anyway, the next one, I'm going to go ahead and preface this by saying I read this and did not realize the author was problematic until afterwards. Anytime you are, this is my thought process with problematic authors. Do not support them directly. Like, don't like continuously give them the hype. If you do want to read something of theirs, just out of curiosity or whatever, get a thrifted book, get it secondhand, use your library. I always heavily recommend, I always go through my library, and if I love a book from my library, then I'll purchase it somewhere else. But like, go through your library and read from them first. You don't necessarily have to support these authors who tend to be problematic. Um anyway, like I was saying, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, I there was a lot of back and forth about this book. I heard I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.25. It was definitely interesting, and I like stuff like this. I like watching people through time. Like I enjoy watching seeing how people's relationships fold and unfold. And I think that's maybe just part of the reason why I really enjoyed it, and I also just really enjoyed the whole concept and the whole video game thing. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the writing and everything of that nature. The author sucks apparently, is what it is. Anyway, the next one afterwards I read was Circe. I was really excited to read this book, especially after reading Song of Achilles, because I love Song of Achilles. This is not the fault of the author; it just happens to be the storyline. Unfortunately for me, I gave it a 3.25 because like it is really well written and it is well done. But for me, the fact, and this is not a spoiler or anything, it's Circe, because she's on the island and most of the story is on the island. It just feels stuck for so long. And like yes, things happen and things come and go, but like and she like it, but it's just like I needed more. And that was I should have known better going in. I just wanted more things to happen, more adventure. I wasn't expecting. I knew what I was expecting when I was getting into it. I just it's too slow for me. I guess if that is not the proper one, which is actually going to coincide with what I read next, which is Dune. I Dune for whatever reason I started thinking I didn't like sci-fi fantasy when I started reading Dune because I was like sci-fi fantasy is space and space only. It was not space only. I'm just dumb. It is what it is. I read Dune and there was a lot of pieces I liked about it and I would get really excited and then it would drone on and drone on and drone on and then it would get exciting again and drone on and drone on and drone on. I actually kind of am tempted now and like only recently I was like I should pick up the rest of the series. Been debating about it, but I gave it a 2.75. But I don't know. I know the next part of it isn't as long as the first part, and so I think that's why I'm like tempted now. I don't know. It's been a vibe. Next, I read the duology of Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. Here's the thing. This was so heavily pushed as a fantasy, and I get why, because there's like hints of magic. For me, this was more of a historical wartime romance than fantasy. Like the fantasy magical sense of it was such a minor subplot. Like you could have done away with it and it would have still probably been just as good, if that makes any sense. Um Anyway, I gave Divine Rivals a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was very like it was just very nice. Like the way it was done was just overall it was enjoyable. Like for me, when people were telling me Fourth Wing felt like oh it's like trash TV. You know, like it was something easy to consume but enjoyable. No, this was like trash TV. This was good. This was enjoyable. This was easy to comb through and easy to like consume. Ruthless Vows. I also gave Ruthless Vows a 4.0. Honestly, looking back, I might put it down to like a 3.75 if I really wanted to kind of be really nitpicky about it. Overall, it was like an enjoyable little series. I enjoyed it. I bought it in the end because I was like, I liked you enough. Then I also read the other duology of oh lord, is it what the river knows? Yeah, what the river knows and what the library hides. I was really excited for this one. I really was. I could not stand the main character. And the plot itself also just like it kind of just felt like it was just constantly boing 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 boing. It just constantly moved. There was so many parts of it. I was just like we could have solved this so quickly with one little thing. And yet the main character is just insufferable. I ended up giving it the first one a 2.75 and then the second one a 1.75. I was really excited for this book. I was really disappointed that it didn't do as well as I was hoping it was going to. Then I read Ninth House and Hellbent. And listen, I first read Ninth House and I was kind of reading the main character and there was points I kind of thought she might be racist to herself. I was just like reading and I was like I don't know what's happening here. And I didn't love the first okay, I gave it a 3.75 the first book. The second book is when I really got involved and I was like, "Oh, no no no. Now I like this." And I gave the second book a 4.0, which honestly, you would think that 0.25 isn't that big of a deal. It apparently was in my brain at the time, okay? Anyway, don't I don't think we're gonna get that third book anytime soon. But I will admit, I had a little bit of issues just kind of with the writing in that first book, but a lot of it had to do with just the way the character treated herself. Not like it just there was just random comments. I'm like, you feel racist to yourself, and I don't know how I feel about this. Anyway, overall, it was 3.75 and a 4.0. It was kind of one of those things like I like if you enjoyed the first one, the second one is probably worth it for you. Then I also read the other duology. I was going on a duology spree, and I happened to have a lot of good ones, and I was excited about it. But I read the One Dark Window, and I gave it a 4.25 and a 4. That was so good. The magic system in that was great. I was obsessed with the magic system, and it was like well spaced. Like despite the fact that everything also again, this was another one of the things where everything kind of seemed to be happening quickly, but it felt well spaced out and well timed enough. Like it wasn't like constantly feeling like rushed compared to where the what the library when what the river knows. I've lost track. Overall, and I also the writing style was so well done. Was this? I could be wrong. Was this not her debut? I'll say if it was, I cannot wait to see what else she cooks up. I know she's coming out with something else soon, and I'm really excited for it because that was well done. If that's what her mind thinks like from now on, cannot wait. And then I read the Greenbone Saga. I'm going to go ahead and preface this. I need to reread this because I made the mistake of reading this when I was really, really busy at work. And so I read the first one and I don't really know what happened. I didn't miss anything. Like when I was going back to like look at YouTube videos and like look at other reviews, I'm like, did I miss something? No. No, I don't. I think there was my issue was is that there were certain POVs I just could care less about. And so I was just like, okay, get on with it. And I was more excited for like two or three individuals. And so there I always just got that one POV and I'm like, move on. That being said, it was still phenomenal. I just there was certain people I just could not wait to get out of their POV, right? I ended up giving the first one a 3.5, second one a 3.5, and the third one a 4. But I would like to go back and reread this when I'm not like slammed at work because I am curious to see if if my like perspective changes because I'm not like in a rush with work if the freaking POV who really annoyed me like and like I just wanted to speed through it is still going to annoy me the second round. I hope not, but you never know. The next was the Sunbearer was another duology, the Sunbearer Trials. I gave the first one a 4 and the second one a 3.75. This was a nice, again, this was a nice, easy to consume duology. I enjoyed this. It was easy to follow. It was well written. It was creative. It definitely gave off a little bit of the Hunger Game vibes. I enjoyed this. Again, this was easy to consume and enjoyable. Freaking, I loved it. It was great. Um, then I read A Study in Drowning. I don't know what I read it and I reread it again because I had the time because I read it in 24 hours and I was like, I don't have to return this yet. I'm gonna reread it. I still don't know what really happened. I gave it a 2. I don't know what happened. Then I read One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. Listen, after the Atlas 6, I was kind of wondering how I felt about her. And then I decided after reading this one, I was like, I should have started this. Friggin' loved this. This was phenomenal. One for My Enemy was so well done. It was creative. I loved the way it was like written. Like if you look at it, it is what is the term? I'm blanking. I will figure it out later, I'm sure. But the way it is written is definitely a little bit creative, and I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the plot. I gave it a 4.25. It was fun. It was enjoyable. Then I read The Dark Rise and Dark Air. This is another one I plan on rereading because I'm hearing a rumor that the third book should be out by December of 2025. Lightly, maybe a little bit after. But that's what I'm hearing that they're loosely planning on dropping it. I did not go into this book series blind, and so many people had convinced me it was something different. And I went in with expectations, and I was really confused after I read the first book because I was like, what is everyone talking about? Like, I do not know where you all are getting your information because I think you're psychopaths. Then I read the second one, and I was like, starting to connect a little bit more, but I wish you all had not described this book the way you had originally described it to me because it did not make sense when I went into the first book. So I would like to go back and reread this book before the third book comes out because I really did enjoy it. I was so lost and confused though, because purely just because I made the mistake of listening to other people before going into this book. Despite what I just rambled about, it is well written. I enjoyed the characters. The magic system is very interesting in this as well. I am very interested in the way that the time travel, well, not really time travel, but the reincarnation system has been working. I It was very interesting, but I definitely should have gone in blind. Like that's part of why I don't want to say anything now, is because I wish I had gone in blind. It was great. It was good. I gave it a 3.5, 3.75, and I honestly wonder if it would not be higher if I had gone in blind. Anyway, next I read The Martingale. I friggin' loved this book. There was a small little issues with but it had to do with just other things. I gave it a 4.75. This was so well done. I enjoyed the writing. For the most part, I was heavily invested in the story. There was the one sister that sometimes I was just like, but I obviously time period, and I understand that not everybody is their sister, and it was just a whole thing. But I gave it a 4.75. I really enjoyed the book. Um, I've been kind of wanting to read The Woman by her as well, except for a couple people have been like, you won't enjoy it as much as Nightingale. Still on my list of things to read. Then I read When the Moon Hatched. Listen, I I read this book and it felt like I read a whole lot of nothing. It was just, you could tell they just wanted this to be spicy romance, but they wanted, like, the idea, honestly, the constant concept that they were throwing at us with the dragons, the fantasy sounded great. We didn't get any of it. It was a subplot. The fantasy was the subplot. It was just, I hated it. I know there's another one coming out. I'm not gonna pick it up. I gave it a 1.75, and honestly, I felt like that was kind of generous. Um, then I read a series by V.E. Schwab called the Cassidy Blake series. Because I got it off the Libby app. When I opened it, I didn't realize it was technically middle school. I was like, oh well, it was a short, quick read, might as well. And so I've read all three of them. And again, it is definitely targeted for middle schoolers. If you have a middle schooler who enjoys kind of like the little bit of horror, little bit of ghost, they might like the Cassidy Blake series. I give it a 3.25, 3 and 3. Again, quick little middle school horror stories. If you enjoyed that, you'll enjoy that. Oh, I got interrupted. I just totally lost my groove. Where were we? Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Listen, this was so interesting and so well done. Listen, you are not. I think a lot of people complained about this with this book. You are not supposed to like the main character. At no point are you supposed to cheer for her and hoping she does well. No, no, no. She literally stole a novel off of her dead best friend. Okay, not even best friend. She didn't even freaking like her. She was jealous and bitter about her the whole time, and she was kept trying to play it off like she actually wasn't, but she was. It was the whole thing. Anyway, not only that, but she was also like very casually trying to modify herself to appear less white to hopefully profit a little bit more off of, again, her dead best friend's novel. And here's the thing, it was so well done, and the concept was also so creative. I like, again, at no point are you ever cheering for the main character. You're not supposed to. But like, I was obsessed with the fact that you can feel her panic through the book, like the entire time. I could constantly feel her anxiety of like constantly being ready to be outed. The thing was too, maybe this was also just me, just because I connected a little bit more, because a couple years ago was I was hounded by a bunch of people on social media because, God forbid, I make the same type of content as someone else that I had been making content of for years before they even showed up. Regardless, it was the amount of death threats and nasty stuff that came through me. I was constantly getting anxiety just opening any of my social medias. So I totally freaking felt what she described is totally accurate. The anxiety of like having to see all that, but also constantly feeling needed to check to see what's happening. Freaking nailed it, and you could feel every little part of it. I loved it. I gave it a 4.0. It was just so well done. It was so creative. It obviously it handled it, and it handled and covered like a topic that like is like a serious very topic, but it was just it was so well done. Anyway, I can't keep rambling. Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. This was definitely kind of just more of a fun, chaotic read. Like it just the writing in this one definitely kind of felt like a little bit like boing boing, I guess. But it was, I think it was meant to purposely, because it is kind of a chaotic read. Like it is a fun chaotic read. Like that's just what it's supposed to be, or at least I think that's why I interpreted it as what it was supposed to be. It was definitely creative though. I enjoyed the whole supernatural thing, but I felt like a lot of like the leading up to the gambling thing was kind of such a lead up, and it was just kind of like, or like the tables, not the gambling, but the tables. I was just like, anyway, I got a 3.5. We're almost done. I've rambled so much, I feel like. Oh dear. The Throne of Glass series. Listen, I I knew I was not going to like this series because I hated Fourth Wing, and everyone and your mother always kind of lumps ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, Fourth Wing together. But I kind of told myself, I was like, read it to validate the reason why you're not going to like it. It's kind of how I felt about it. I was like, just read it. Because everyone always asks, oh, you should read it. Oh, you should read it. And I'm like, I just need to say, I hated it. Is kind of how I felt like at this point. Here's the thing. I actually read Throne of Glass first. I've been alternating because I'm still actively reading them. And I've kind of just been alternating with whatever Libby actively has. And so, I'm never actually going to ever read these in proper order, but it is what it is. I started with Throne of Glass. I actually didn't hate it. I didn't love the main character, but I was like, she very much felt, again, Wattpaddy of like basic, oh, good at everything somehow, wanted by everyone somehow, and yet, just very pick me. Well, not like pick me. What is the term I'm looking at? YN. You know, like the little YN characters that head in Wattpad? That's exactly what she is. Anyway, read the first one. I gave it a 3 stars. Wasn't the worst one. Read the second one. I gave it a 2. And then I read The Assassin's Blade. Gave it a 2.5. I've recently finished the next one, and I have to say, the more I'm reading them, the more I'm not liking them. At this point in the series, I should be feeling character development from her. There isn't. And some might validate, well, she's got her tattoos now, or kind of a shine. No, they're not. She's a materialistic assassin who literally has not changed in any of these books. Now she just has fun little fire powers. That's all I got from there. The more I'm reading it, the more I don't like it. I was kind of optimistic the first book. No, I'm gonna finish it just because I need a hate read at this point, and I just need to say it's stupid and it belongs on Wattpad, and that's kind of where I'm still feeling at right now. I also read ACOTAR, and I only read the first one so far for 2024. I actually just finished the second one for 2025. Listen, I didn't like the first one. It was a 2. It was boring. I was like, this is just, it's whatever. The second one, I actually didn't mind as much. I think I gave it a 2.75, but like, I don't know. It's still, it is what it is. I knew walking into it I wasn't going to enjoy it, but I just feel like I needed to read why I wasn't going to enjoy it, which is the dumbest thing possible. We can't ignore me now. I've just been rambling. Academy for Liars. I kind of went into this a little blind, and I was kind of a little excited because a lot of people were talking about it as a dark academia, and it was kind of a little bit like a psychotic because it was more mental. And I really felt like the entirety of this book was kind of just pointless. Like at no point did I ever feel like the stakes were super high. And I know might invalidate that by like, well, yeah, her death. No, they wanted to keep her alive because they needed to keep her alive up to a point. So I definitely kind of felt like, I don't know. And then she was just so overpowered, and there was kind of like, it wasn't that fact she was overpowered because they did end up training her. It really felt, maybe it was just the pacing of it. It really felt like she just came overpowered to begin with. I don't know. I really wanted to enjoy this, and I was really kind of sad I didn't. And then, and I know, then there was the whole teacher student relationship. I just didn't like it. It was a 2.5. There's parts of it. There was specific parts of the writing I did enjoy, but like that was about the extent of it. I got really excited with the horror part. Like that was probably the most excited part for me was like the touches of horror. That was about it. Anyway, The last but not least, well, maybe least, we don't like the author in this one either, apparently. Red Rising. I admit that like when I was reading Dune, for some reason, thought I was thinking sci-fi fantasy is space fantasy and like only space fantasy. And I had started to convince myself I didn't like sci-fi fantasy. And then I realized I'm an idiot because sci-fi means science, not just space. I don't know. It was a whole thing. Science fiction is not just space. And so I was reading Red Rising, and that little thought bubble came back up because I was kind of bored at the beginning as they were kind of originally talking about everything, and I realized that is what I don't like with certain sci-fi fantasies is the world building, but for whatever reason, it's the space world building sometimes for me. I'm just like, I get it. I understand we need this, but like, hurry it up. Once we got past that, I heavily, heavily enjoyed it. A lot of people compared it to Hunger Games. I would not. You know what this is more to me? Do you all remember Lord of Flies? It is like a more adult version of Lord of Flies that kind of combined toward Hunger Games toward the end. That's exactly what this was, though. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I am supposed to be starting the second book here soon, so I'm kind of curious to see where exactly it's going to go from there. But there was definitely sections of it where it was kind of just slow in the beginning, and that's just that's just kind of how I feel. Anyway, that was all 56 books I think that I read in 2024. I rambled way too much. This was much longer than it was supposed to be. Should I have technically split this up in a couple videos because I'm still going to talk about my 2025 reading goals? Yeah. In my January TBR? Yeah, absolutely, probably. But we're not going to because editing purposes. And listen, if I keep freaking delaying this, it's never going to get out. So might as well. So yeah, for those of you who were like, "Wow, that was a long-winded 2024 wrap up," it was, and it could have been so much worse. Anyway, 2025 reading goals. Here's the thing: I'm a really big like checking off the list person, and sometimes I can get a little bit too competitive, making sure stuff like that gets done, especially when there's like numbers involved. And so I tried really hard not to put like anything too solid as a goal this year because a lot of it like I'm just getting back into reading. Last year was my first year back. I've always been a notoriously fast reader. Like I know the number game isn't a big deal. So mainly my thing was like my hard goals like with numbers and things is I would like to read 50 books. Definitely doable. It's really easily doable. I did that last year with only half a year. So like that's something that is there. My other kind of like harder goal is obviously if I'm doing the book social media thing, which is new. It was something I had thought about quite a bit last year, and I was like, you should just do it. And like, yes, most of this is for myself. Like, it's mainly like a live, like a journal ish kind of thing for me. I tend to ramble in general to myself at home. Why don't you just ramble on camera? And now at least you have a recording of it so you can remember your ramblings because I am forgetful. So the video idea was nice. And then also just, who freaking knows whatever becomes of it. Sometimes rambling to the universe is beneficial and you find other people who also just enjoy your similar ramblings and also have the same theories as you do. So that was kind of the whole thought. I was like, well, if you're gonna do the book social media thing, my whole goal with it is just get a little more comfortable throughout the year. It's gonna be rough. You're gonna have like I'm gonna figure out what works for me. I'm gonna find my ups and downs. I'm gonna figure it out. But like just get better, be consistent. So like I don't have like a weekly or monthly goal. I just want to try to find what I enjoy and just get consistent with it. So that's kind of like my harder set goals. Overall, though, I also want to just read more genres. I read so much fantasy just because I feel like that was what was so pushed toward me. And I love fantasy. I do. Don't get me wrong. I would definitely like to explore a little bit more out of it. I want to read more Dark Academia. Definitely love it. What else was there? Oh, and then I feel like the last one is definitely kind of cheesy, but where I was getting back into reading last year, I definitely kind of feel like I pressured myself to kind of catch up and read the way everything everyone was recommending me. And reality is, I think I just want to kind of relax a little bit and kind of have a little more fun and just enjoy reading again. I was such an avid reader as a kid. I was always a really fast, avid, like rapid reader. I would read so much. So I know consuming the numbers isn't the problem. And I've always been someone who, like, when I consume a book, I can typically I at least typically remember the gist of it. So, like, obviously me recording, I'm gonna remember all my finer details. And but like I've always been able to consume a book and able to hold it in my brain well enough. So like I digest it. I just want to be able to do it fun. I want this to be a hobby. I don't want it to be a constant pressure because I've managed to turn a lot of my other hobbies into jobs, and I don't want necessarily that to happen with my books. Anyway, so that's kind of just my 2025 goals. Nothing too crazy. Last but not least, my January TBR. This could have all been 3 different videos and felt so much smoother, but this is the consequences of my actions. Anyway, luckily, here's the thing. My TBRs are always very flexible because 2 things. One, I super understand that I have a job and she takes up the heavy majority of my time. Right? Right. Phenomenal. Second, I'm also at the will of the Libby app. And obviously, sometimes holds are beholding, and sometimes things come faster than they're supposed to, and things of that nature. So I very much kind of just I look ahead, see what is potentially going to come to me that month, and kind of just go from there. And just if I feel like adding something between here and there, I do. Anyway, um, so realistically, obviously, we're like halfway through January. I've already read one of the books on my list, which was Legendborn. I will honestly just talk about that at a later because I didn't have my notes with me. And honestly, I was gonna make a video about me live reacting to Legendborn, but I was just dying at the time, physically, mentally, emotionally. So I didn't do that. Shame on me. I will officially start with the next one. And the next one happens to be Blood Over Brighthaven. So that is my next read going into January or on my TBR. Um Another one on my TBR that I have been so excited for. I have been on hold for months for this book. I think it was back in like August, maybe even before that when I requested this book. I just now got it like yesterday. I'm so freaking excited. And that is Don't Let the Forest In. I have been waiting for this book forever. I can't wait. And also another one, I also have the Golden Sun is also one that actually just recently came in, so I am going to also try to read that. And then if I have time at the end of the month, I am going to finally sit down and try and read The Will of the Many. I tried to pick up The Will of the Many, I think it was in December, and it wasn't its fault at all. It definitely once I picked it up and I read the first little bit, I very quickly realized that this is a book I need to sit down to read. It's not something I can constantly keep picking up and doing because this is a book I can sit and read in one sitting, but I actually need to be able to do that. And I did not have any time in December to do that. So I'm hoping I have enough time here in January where I will be able to read it and read it all in one sitting. So realistically, like that's pretty much it for my January TBR. It is, I already read Legendborn, so that one's checked off. Blood Over Brighthaven is my next one. That will actually probably be my first review video. Don't Let the Forest In is my second one. I've been so excited for that book. I hope anyway, I'm praying. I don't want sad things. I want good vibes. Then Don't Let the Force In is my second one. Golden Sun, which is the second to Red Rising, is my next one. And then hopefully, if I have time for it as well, The Will of the Many. Um, so yeah, this is officially, I guess, once we get to Blood Over Brighthaven is when I'm hopefully going to be starting doing my reviews, aka my end of reviews and my live reacts. I was hoping to do it with Legendborn. I was just busy. So I didn't. Anyway, so yeah, that is officially it. That is my 2024 reading wrap up. Those are my 2025 goals, and that is my January TBR. And hopefully, from now on, I say this now, I'm lying to you right now. Hopefully, from now on, things are a little bit less chaotic. That is a lie because the chaos behind me has just begun. Anyway, uh, don't be like me. Stay hydrated. Have a good nap. And until next time.